Welcome to this hip strength and mobility class. Today we're going to be moving the hips in all ranges of movement, making sure that we are strong and stabilized at the same time. So you don't need any equipment today. We're just going to start lying down on our back, knees bent, feet flat. And just take a second to check in with your starting position on the ground here. So your feet are hip distance apart and your toes are long, and you're just pressing gently into the floor, feeling the contact of the ground through the soles of the feet. Your knees are also hip distance apart so that you have a straight line from your hip joints through to your knees into your ankles, so your knees aren't rocking in or falling out. Just feel the back of your pelvis heavy on the floor, pelvis in neutral, so hip points pointing up toward the ceiling, back of the shoulders heavy into the ground, and spread wide through the collarbones and gazes up toward the ceiling, keeping your chin off your chest and arms down by your side, framing your body. So we're going to start today with some knee rolls. Knee rolls are moving the knees left and right, but without letting the pelvis go with the thighs or go with the knees, okay? So essentially we're moving the thigh bones in the hip joint, okay? But the pelvis stays completely still. So let's bring our hands to the front of the pelvis just so that we know that our pelvis is still. Take a breath in. Then as you exhale, start to take your knees over to the right and stop when you feel that your pelvis starts to go with it. So you're going to have to switch on some centering here to help your pelvis resist falling over to the right with your knees. Inhale, come back to center, and then exhale, bring your knees over to the left. Again, stop when you feel that you can't control your pelvis anymore. And then inhale, come back to center. Keep going side to side, exhaling to move those knees over and inhaling to come back to center. I'm just going to change my position on the mat so that you can see what my knees are doing. So I take my knees to the right, I come onto the edges of my feet, but my pelvis is staying down. If I was to let my pelvis come up off the floor, I would look like this, okay? So we don't want to do that. So I come back to center, and then I bring my knees to the left. Again, pelvis is staying down. If I was to let my pelvis lift, I would be doing that. So we don't want to do that. There's no movement in your spine or your pelvis. So just do a few more, just exploring that range of movement in your hip sockets. If you are confident that your pelvis isn't moving, you can bring your hands back down by your side. And we're just getting used to that feeling of isolating that hip movement from the rest of our body. So we have to switch on our center enough to make sure that our hips are almost separate from our torso and from our pelvis. Our hip joints are in our pelvis and the head of our thigh bones are up deep inside the pelvis. But we don't want to move the thigh bones in the pelvis whilst the whole pelvis is moving, okay? So in these exercises, we're isolating that movement. So come back to center so that your feet are flat on the floor. And we're going to take our right knee in toward the chest, but don't let your pelvis move, okay? So we're not rocking that pelvis back so that the lower back falls into the floor. We're keeping that pelvis neutral. Let go of the back of your knee so that your heel comes towards your butt cheek. So you've got a deep knee fold here. And you're going to draw the knee as far in as you can. So you're going to feel something through the front of your hip flexor working, but we're not letting that pelvis rock. We're not moving our spine. On an inhale, you're going to lengthen that right leg away. So it's just hovering above the floor and push the heel away. But again, don't let your pelvis now rock forward. We're keeping our pelvis stable the whole time. Exhale, bring the knee all the way in. Squeeze the front of the hip using the thigh. And then inhale, lengthen that leg away, parallel to the floor, pushing that heel away. Good. Exhale, draw the belly in, bring that knee in. Inhale, lengthen the leg away. Exhale, bring it in. Inhale, lengthen away. Good, keep going so that we're just moving through this range of movement of hip flexion and a little bit of extension and lengthening through the front of the hip as we lengthen that leg. Make sure that your leg is really switched on as it's straight. So push that heel away, but resist that feeling of your pelvis pulling forward. Good, one more. And then letting that right foot come back down to the floor next to the left, and we'll go on to the other side. So we'll take a breath in. Exhale, bring the left knee in toward the chest. Don't let the pelvis or spine move. Inhale, lengthen that left leg long. And then exhale, bring that knee in. Inhale, reach it long, send the heel away, straighten that leg nicely. And then exhale, belly draws into spine as we pull the thigh in. Good, so as you do this, you should be feeling a sense of warmth through the front of the hip. Maybe feeling that your core start to switch on a little bit as we're trying to control the pelvis. So this is simply the thigh bone moving in the hip socket. As I said before, we're isolating that movement from the whole movement of the pelvis. The pelvis doesn't move, the back doesn't move. It's just the thigh bone in the hip joint. Good, let's go for one more. Beautiful. And then placing that left foot back down on the ground. We're now going to lift the right knee back up again and then extend the leg toward the ceiling and flex the foot. So keep the leg straight. You may not get it vertical. You may have to lengthen it a little bit further away from you. That's fine. And start with your toes facing directly toward the wall behind you. Okay, so you've got a straight foot. We're going to now externally rotate. So we're turning the toes to the back corner of the room behind you, so to the right. So we are on our right leg is lifted. We're now rotating our leg so that our toes are pointing towards the right back corner of the room. We're going to come back to the center, so the toes are pointing back toward that wall behind us, and then we rotate internally, so we're trying to get the toes to go to the left back corner of the room, but that's not as easy as the external rotation, so you may not get as far, okay? So we come back to center, rotate out, come to center, rotate in. Good, keep going. Once again, we don't want the pelvis to be moving. We're just rotating the whole leg, okay? So it's not just the ankle, it's the whole leg from the hip joint. It's just a nice way to guide the leg by looking at the toes. So we want to keep the ankle completely still. It's just the toes that go left and right, okay? If you're just moving your foot, then you're not moving your hip, okay? We want to be moving from the hip. The movement starts at the hip. The toes are just a guide. Good, one more. Good, and then release that leg back down. Onto the left leg, so we're picking that knee up, straightening the leg, flexing the foot. Start with those toes pointing toward the wall behind us. We take external rotation, so we turn the hip out and the toes face over toward the left corner of the back wall. And then we turn the leg in and we're trying to face those toes to the right corner of the back wall. Good, keep going. The whole time, the sole of the foot stays pointing towards the ceiling, okay? Make sure you're still breathing here. Notice any rocking that you might have in your pelvis. So sometimes when we hit a bit of a block in our range of movement, we can start to compensate and maybe lift or twist the pelvis to try and get further. But try to avoid that, just let your range of movement be as it is correctly and just have acceptance in that. If you feel like it's maybe not as much as it should be, that's fine. You just have to practice. Good, let's go for one more of these. And then bringing that foot back down. We're now going to straighten the left leg long down the mat. So when you do that, again, just make sure that you haven't then lifted the lower back and pulled the pelvis down. So we want to still feel that opposition of lengthening the leg away, but the core stays on, the hip stays level. And then we straighten that right leg up toward the ceiling once again. Again, it might not get vertical, that's fine. And we're gonna do adduction and abduction. So we're gonna take, let's put the left hand on the left pelvis for this, because we wanna keep the left pelvis down. We're gonna take the right leg out to the right as far as we can before that that left hip starts to lift off the floor. And then we come back to center, and then we take the leg across our body over to the left. Good, then we come back to center. Good, so we're just taking that leg through its range of movement. Again, I'm going to show you a different angle so you can see the movement here. So I'm taking the leg out, but this hip doesn't move. If I was to move my hip, I'd do that, okay? You can see that left hip lifts up, so we don't want to do that. And then come to center, and then we go across the body, but we don't want to let that right hip lift off the ground too much, okay? Excuse the angle here. I know it's not the most ideal angle, but it's just so that you can see what the movement is meant to be so that you can do it correctly. Good. So lots of core control required in this one. So we're really resisting that feeling of the body going with the leg. Good, next time you come to center, we'll swap legs. So bring that right foot down, lengthen the right leg long, and then take the left leg up toward the ceiling. This time the right hand comes to the right hip just to make sure that it stays down. And then we take the left leg out to the left. Inhale, come to center. Exhale, take it over to the right. Inhale to center. Good, keep going left and right. You might have more control one side than the other, and that's fine. And whilst we're focusing so much on the hip, just make sure that your head hasn't come out of position. Sometimes we can start to drop the chin into the chest, or we start to lift the chin too high. We start to bring tension into the shoulders for a little bit of help. So you can brace through the back of the shoulders and the back of the upper arms just to help your center switch on, but try not to make them tense and tight. Good. One more. And then the next time you come through center, you're going to place that foot back down. Bring your knees back into a bend with your feet flat on the floor. And we're going to come into our spine curl now. So again, make sure that your feet are hip distance apart. Take a breath in. As you exhale, tuck your tailbone and start to wheel your hips off the floor, then bringing your spine one vertebrae at a time off the ground. Pause at the top, keeping that tailbone tucked like you're trying to roll a marble from your pubic bone all the way up to your face. When we're at the top here, lengthen the toes, press equally through to the feet, through the whole of the feet. And then we're just going to lift the heels up. And then keep the hips that high and lower the heels back down. So lower the heels without lowering the hips. And then start to come back down with the spine one vertebrae at a time. And then finally untucking the tailbone, releasing back to neutral. Let's do that again. Tuck the tailbone, wheel the spine up off the floor one vertebrae at a time. Keep pressing down into your feet, lift the heels at the top. Lower the heels, keep the hips high. And then lowering one vertebrae at a time. Back down, releasing into neutral. Breathe as you need to here, just to help the flow. And again, keeping the rib cage down as you wheel those hips up. Keep the toes long, lifting those heels, hips high, lower the heels. Rib cage stays down, sternum stays heavy, lowering everything back down. We'll just go for one more. Very nice. And then once you finish that, you're just going to roll onto your side to make your way up to an all fours position into 4-point kneeling. So this next one can be a little tricky to get at first, but once you get it, it's worth it. It's one of those ones where it's a lot of explaining, and then when it clicks, you're like, oh yeah, and then it actually feels really nice. It feels very like productive, you know, like, oh, this is doing something. So in all fours, you're just going to tuck your toes, and we're just going to start by creating internal rotation through our pelvis, or through our hips, okay? So with your right foot, you're going to tap the outside of the mat, but keep your knee on the floor, okay? So again, if I was to change angle for you to see, my foot is going to tap over to the right, but my knee hasn't lifted. So I'm moving this right leg into internal rotation, okay? Come back to center, we go to the left. So the left leg is going to move. So again, that's gone into internal rotation, and then come back. Good. Just do that a few times each side, and see if you can maintain stillness of the pelvis. I know that I tend to move more when I do my left hip. So I struggle to get that internal rotation of my left hip without wobbling my pelvis. So if you do wobble your pelvis, it's not a big deal, don't worry. Just notice it, see if you can control it. Okay, so now we're gonna stay with that right foot on the outside of your mat, so you're in that internal rotation. Then you're going to lift your right knee off the floor and take it out to the right so that you can plant your foot on the floor and sit back onto your left heel. So it's kind of like a shell stretch or a child's pose, but one knee is lifted, okay? And then we come back. We come back the same way that we came. So we lower the knee down, so we're back in internal rotation, and then place that foot back down where it should be. I'm going to do the next one facing the camera. So we're going to take the left leg out, so we're in internal rotation through the thigh. Then we're going to take the left knee out so that we're planting that left foot down, and we sit the hips back. And that left foot is on the floor, that knee is facing out, and we push back. Then we come forward again, we bring the left knee down so that it's back in that normal position, and then place the foot back into its normal position. So I'll go to the right again. So if you've got this, keep going in your flow as you need, and I'm just going to do a few facing the camera, and hopefully, if you're confused, you can watch this and then pick it up and follow along. You might need to do the video a few times to get it right. I remember the first time I first learned this, I looked at the teacher like, I think you've glitched. I don't know. You're not making any sense. Alas, she was. Good, let's go one more each. Finishing on the left, so I've just got one more. Good. I'm going to stay facing in this direction for the next one. It's our adductor stretch. So we're going to take the right leg out to the side, and it's at hip height, okay? So it's not just back there, it's high at hip height. See if you can plant the foot down, the sole of the foot down, and then we're going to sit the hips back. So again, we're back in that sort of half shell stretch, but that leg is out, okay? So if I was to change way again, you can see that foot is staying at hip height or in line with my left knee, and I sit back. So that might feel really strong for you. If so, great, it's doing its job. If you don't feel enough, you're going to switch on your right quad, so the top of your right thigh. You're going to draw your kneecap up, switch that on, press the foot into the floor, and then sit back. So you're creating more resistance into this stretch. Good, 2 more deep breaths here. Good, okay, and then let's come back into 4-point kneeling and go onto the other side. So we take the left leg out in line with the hips and the knee, the right knee, and then sit the bum down. Make sure that the sole of the foot is on the floor, or you're trying to reach the sole of the foot to the floor as much as you can. And take some deep breaths here. Yet again, if you need to feel more sensation, then you can work that leg a little bit further out and draw the left kneecap up the thigh and press the foot into the floor. Create that internal rotation. Good. 2 more deep breaths here. Good. And then coming back into 4-point kneeling. Now we're going to come to side lying. So I'm going to start with my left arm underneath me. So just lengthening that left arm out underneath, or your bottom arm out underneath your ear, your bottom ear. Pick up your side body so that your spine is straight, and we'll lengthen the top leg in line with the hip. Okay, so we have a feeling of length through the crown of the head, length through the tailbone, and length through the top leg that's extended. Bring your top hand in front of you just for a little bit of balance and to lift away from, so that we're not, again, dropping through the under ribs on the left side or on the bottom side. And we're going to take a leg forward and back. So we're going to exhale, bring it forward. Inhale, come back. Exhale, come forward. Inhale, come back. So as you do this, we're trying to not let your pelvis rock. So that our pelvis isn't going with the leg. So it's almost like we need to move the pelvis in the opposite direction as the leg to keep it balanced. Well done. And then we're going to pause with the leg in line with the hip, so it's parallel to the floor. And just softly point the toes and start to draw a little circle. So start small. We're now going to start to spiral that circle bigger and bigger until it's as big as you can get it, again without moving the pelvis. So we're actively controlling our leg through this entire range of motion of this circle. Good, then change direction, stay big. It's okay if there's a little wobble because we're exploring here. Good, and then start to come a little smaller with that circle. So spiraling down, 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 until your circle is back to being tiny. Good. And then rest that leg down. Onto the other side. So take the right arm out underneath you. Bend your knees in front of your hips. And then find that opposition. Lengthen through the crown of the head, lengthen through the tailbone, lengthen through that top leg that's now extended, balancing on our top hand in front of us. Taking the leg forward and back, so we breathe in to prepare. Exhale, bring the leg forward. Inhale, bring the leg back. Exhale, come forward. Inhale, come back. Good, keep going. So just checking all the time that we're not starting to drop the side body down so that the spine stays straight the whole time. Good. A couple more. Make sure that leg is still parallel to the floor. Good. And then pausing with the leg in line with the spine and the hip. Start your small circle. Start to make it bigger, so spiraling out, but don't start letting the rest of your body go with it. So you have to explore how big the circle can be without losing the stability of your body. Good, change direction. Stay big. So a few big in the other direction. And then we start to spiral down and down. Good, until we finish back into our little tiny circle. There we go. And then relax there. Very nice. Let's now come into our hip flexor stretch. So we'll start with the right foot in front, and we just make a 90-90 lunge, okay? So it's not a deep, long lunge, where just the left knee is underneath the left hip and the right ankle is underneath the right knee. From here, place your hands on your hips. You want to stabilize through that left knee, left top of foot, and the right foot to help keep your balance. Tuck your tailbone, okay? So we're bringing the hip points up towards our rib cage. So we're not hanging out here. We're bringing those hip points up, tucking the tailbone, and you should already feel a bit of a stretch come through the front of that left thigh, okay? So keeping that tailbone tucked, we're just gonna start to move forward and back. So taking a deeper right knee bend and then coming back again. So we're coming in and out of a hip flexor stretch, but we're active, okay? We're not switching off. We're not just hanging out in this long passive stretch. We're staying active through our body positioning here, keeping our ribs down, so ribs and hips are connected. Good, 2 more like this. Good. So now we're going to take the hands down and heel toe the right foot across, and then bring the knee down toward the right hand so that we come into our pigeon stretch, but we're going to keep it active, okay? So in pigeon, you can walk that back knee back a little if you need to, so that you're nice and long through that back leg. And then we're going to take the hands away and balance here. Okay, so that we're switching on, holding this work, not just sitting down into that right hip. So again, I'm just gonna turn to show you a different angle. So this is where my right leg is in front of me. If I was to relax and be passive, I'm gonna be here on this hip, okay, which we don't want. We don't want to be passive. We want to be up and active, so you have to switch on all of these hip muscles to keep yourself held up, okay? So just take 2 more deep breaths here. And then take those hands down, and then we're just gonna swap sides. So then bring that left foot forward into your 90-90 lunge. So again, right knee is under the right hip, left ankle is under the left knee. Hands on the hips, and we tuck the tailbone, pull the ribs down, pull the hip points toward the ribs, start to feel that stretch happen through the front of the right thigh now, and we're just gonna actively move in and out of that stretch. I like to exhale as you go forward, because that exhale keeps the hip rib connection active when you're in a position that wants to open you, okay? If you were just to let your body go, when you rock forward, you'd probably open up through the front of your body, okay? You're just sort of into this stretch. So an exhale to pull ribs and hips together helps you to keep the stretch in the hip flexor and not let it go into the lower back. Good, take 1 more. And then we come into our active pigeon. So place the hands down, heel toe the left foot across behind the right hand, let the knee come down behind the left hand, walk that back knee back a little further, and then find your strength to hold yourself up in this pigeon. If you need to have support of your hands on the floor, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure that you can probably see a bit better this side when I drop my hip down, okay? We're not just hanging out on this hip, we're upright so that both hips are still square to the floor and the top of your back knee is on the ground, okay? If the knee is a bit sore, you can always put a little blanket or cushion underneath that back knee because it's touching the floor there. Good, so just take a few more breaths here. Keep lifting up like you're trying to levitate off the ground, not giving into that temptation to collapse. Beautiful. Okay, hands down, and we're going to make our way up to standing. So when you come to standing, just give yourself a little wiggle, a little shake, just to make sure that you feel like you've arrived in your standing position, doesn't feel too foreign. And we're going to go into a side stretch. So side stretch is about the spine, but when we do a side stretch, it does actually involve quite a lot of stuff happening in the pelvis, okay? So first we're going to take the right arm up, keep it up by the ear, take a breath in. As you exhale, tilt the head to the left and take your body over to the left. So you'll feel that stretch hopefully come through that right hip. Maybe press a little firmer into the right foot without sending your hips over to the right. So we want to lengthen down through that right leg. Good, coming back up to standing, arm comes back down. Inhale, left arm up. Exhale, take yourself over to the left. Good, feel that stretch, lengthen through that left leg. Make sure that your pelvis is still square. Good, come back up. We go back to the other side again. So right arm comes up. I'm just going to turn to the side to show you. As I come to the side, we want to keep the whole body in line so that we're not going up toward the ceiling with the chest. We're not collapsing forward with the chest. The pelvis isn't twisting. It's on one plane, okay? Lengthen down through the tailbone. Good, come back up. Once more to the other side, head goes to the right, we side bend to the right. So if there's any lower back pain, think about lengthening that tailbone down towards the floor so that you're keeping your hip points pulled up so that we're not letting the rib cage flare and the lower back arch. Okay, we want to pull everything tight and in. Good, come back up to center. Good. So now we're going to do a hip hinge. So keeping a flat back and feet hip distance apart, hands on the hips. Take a breath in. Exhale, keep the legs straight but not locked and hinge forward. So the back stays flat, it's just the pelvis that hinges. Good, inhale, come back up. And exhale, come forward. Imagine sliding your seat bones up the wall behind you and then sliding them back down the wall behind you. Good, a few more. So there's no movement in your back here. Okay, your back stays completely still. You stay long through the back of the neck. We're lengthening through the hamstrings as we tilt that pelvis forward. Good. Now we're going to do it on one leg. Okay, so it's a single leg hip hinge. So you can have your arms out wide. I'm going to still keep my hands on my pelvis because it helps me to keep my pelvis stable. So if you need balance, bring your arms out to the side. If you want to keep pelvis straight, hands on hips. So we're going to take the left leg behind us like a kickstand and then start to do that same hinge forward, bringing that left leg up behind you as you hinge. And then we come back up again. Good. If you need to hold on to something, absolutely do. So as much as the body goes forward, we also want to think about the leg coming up behind us. So it's like a pendulum, okay? So the leg goes up, almost driving the body forward. Think about the movement starting from the leg, driving up toward the ceiling. Good, last one on this side. Good. And then swapping sides. So now we're going to take that right leg behind us like a kickstand. Start to find your balance, long through the spine, and start to hinge down. Just make sure here that you're not locking out through your standing knee, okay? So you're not pushing your knee backwards. We're keeping the knee strong and supported so that there's no hyperextension of that knee joint, especially if you know that you've got a bit of hypermobility. Keep that knee strong and not locked out. That's pretty important here. Good, 2 more. And last one. And then coming back to standing on 2 feet. Feet are now hip distance apart. We're just going to do some Pilates squats. So take the knees into a bend, but don't lean forward with your body, okay? We're just getting some ankle flexion. So the knees go forward. There's a little bit of hip flexion. And the arms come forward here as well. So we're not sitting right down. We're trying to keep our chest upright. Stand back up, arms reach back behind us. And we sit down again. Inhale, come up. Exhale, sit down. Good, so it's quite a small movement. It's nothing like huge or fancy. I just want you to start thinking about mobilizing your ankles, knees, and hips all at the same time. Sometimes when you do this, after all that mobilizing work, there's a few cracks, just because everything's starting to be a little bit more loaded again and working together rather than just the hips. So we're kind of bringing it all together. Good, last one. And then this last movement is a little bit old school, a little bit high school PE, or even primary school PE, but we're just going to do hip circles. So this, as funny as it feels, like, it's a bit silly, it feels like really good for the hip joints. It's so good for the hip joints because you're moving them through their full range of movement here, okay? So there's flexion, side bend, extension, good change direction. So you can just visualize your thigh bones in your hip sockets taking this big full range of movement. So make it as big as you can to really get that freedom in the hip joints. Good, last one. And then bring the hips back to center, back to feet hip distance apart. Soften the knees, coming into a few pelvic tilts forward and back. Keeping the rib cage really still on top of the pelvis, so we're not letting those ribs move, it's just the pelvis that rocks. And then landing your pelvis in its most neutral, most upright position, starting to straighten the legs, letting your arms relax down by your side, and just rock side to side from one foot to the other. And make sure that you've got even weight distribution through both feet, before coming to a standstill, taking a deep breath, exhaling, letting it go, and you are all done. So I hope that your hips feel nice and worked, strong, mobilized, all those good things, and I will see you next time. Thank you.